So really, this is my one and only slide here. Hoping to just kind of jump into our dev environment and just give you a peek into some of the reporting that we've developed, and maybe do a deep dive into anything if you see something that strikes your fancy. But before we do that, just give a quick background of what has been happening at Kroger for the past 2 years. So starting in about mid-2019, the decision was made to modernize our ledger. So prior to beginning of this year, actually, we were on a ledger that was an AS400 in-house built system from sometime in the 1970s. So as we decided what we were going to do, the decision was made to go ahead and jump straight into the cloud. So we've jumped, ahead 40 years essentially in our technology over the last 2 years. So we have gone with Oracle as our ledger provider, and they are doing this all in the cloud, including some of the sub-ledger systems, and we bought a whole suite of packages. But sometime around late 2019, I got a little bit worried about my job here because Dodeca is my happy place. And we were moving into this Oracle cloud environment, and it wasn't quite sure what was going to happen with our reporting. But after a couple months of discovery and feedback from our user base, Dodeca was back on the table. It became quite apparent that the number of users that we have was something that the cloud was not going to allow us to do. So we needed a supplemental reporting platform. In addition, PBCS just didn't really meet the needs for what we wanted. So we've decided to continue to maintain our Essbase planning solutions. Now, there was some talk about us moving into the cloud using 21C in the cloud, but it felt like it was too much to do at that point in time. So we are still doing all of our Essbase and Dodeca on-prem, but we are using the Oracle GL data that we are pulling out of the cloud as part of that basis. So for the past 2 years, we've been on a journey to essentially recreate everything that we had from a financial reporting standpoint. It's a little bit of an exaggeration. We still have some of our old legacy processes, but it's probably upwards of 90% of our financial reporting has been written in the last 2 years. So what we decided to do was we went with the clean slate approach. This was our chance to start over new, and we felt like that was the best way to go about doing that. So we had a Essbase server that was underutilized, and as once we sold off our C-Stores division, we didn't really need a lot of those cubes. So we moved all of the legacy processing off of that server and started building brand new Essbase cubes. Took us down from, we had about 150 cubes that we were actively maintaining in our old environment to somewhere around 40 cubes related to financial reporting. I think that number is steadily increasing. We're probably back up to about 50 or so now. But we also took that same approach with Dodeca. We decided to launch a new tenant, and all of the reporting was going to either be converted over from the old tenants into the new tenant or written new. What that means is, sorry, got a little disturbance in that. What that meant was we were consolidating all of our reporting down from 5 tenants into, we still have 3 tenants, but one of them is waiting for a legacy application to be decommissioned, and then we're going to decommission that tenant. And then we have a separate one for our corporate and our store reporting. So we want our store personnel to enter through a different portal. that process there, through the process of elimination, we were able to get down from about 700 reports that we were maintaining in Dodeca to about 200 or so reports after the conversion. And the way we were able to do that was through consolidation due to the design of the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts that was implemented in Oracle was a single chart of accounts for all of our non-consolidating entities. That meant that our manufacturing plants, our logistics, our restaurants, and our supermarkets, they were all using the same set of accounts, the same set of cost centers, et cetera. By doing this, we were able to combine our reporting and combine our reporting tools, so we no longer need to maintain separate set of reporting for manufacturing separate from our supermarkets. So this has led to a great number of efficiencies, as well as a smaller set of processes that we have to maintain. Now we actually, I think, have more processes running than we ever have in the past, but that's because we're asking our system to do more than it ever has. But it has also, the design of our cubes and our reporting has been simplified. And since we were able to start from new, we were able to reuse a lot of the same assets over and over again, so that, our reporting, even though it is, different reports, they follow the same structure, kind of what you've heard all across the past 2 days, standardization, making sure that every report looks and feels the same way kind of situation. By leveraging all of those kind of governance items, we were able to bring down the amount of maintenance, but also give a comfort and familiarity to the user jumping from one set of reports to another. All right, so now all that said, I'm gonna go ahead, unless there are any questions, gonna go ahead and dive into Dodeca itself.
I think you can go ahead.
All right, so I have a number of reports queued up here. So the first thing that we solved here in Dodeca, and one of the things we've always struggled with, has been our application tokens. Application tokens, nothing systematically wrong with them. We've just never been able to seem to get a handle of those. Either people were rolling them at the wrong time, they were changing them, they were forgetting to change them, or they were changing them to the wrong value. And it just gave us a lot of grief. So to solve for that, one of the things we do now is when our tenant opens, we have a splash screen. Originally it was going to go with an Excel splash screen like we've seen in a couple other presentations, but our users wanted something outside of Dodeca, so we went with a URL. So on the splash screen, we have a workbook script, and its sole purpose is to add some tokens for substitution variables. So we add application tokens through this report, and then we're able to just propagate those across all of our reports. And it's based off substitution variables, which are automated through Maxwell scripts that we have elsewhere. So those are always set to the right value every time, unless something were to happen with our Maxwell, which hasn't happened today. So that's been a huge help in a lot of our maintenance and making sure that things are running accordingly. And then next was the task of writing the financials themselves. The way we are doing our financials is that we are updating our financial reporting cubes. They're ASOs. We're updating them every 15 minutes whenever we're in a closing window. Since they're ASO, we're taking advantage of the aggregate views. The problem we ran in there was people were in there trying to use our cubes, and every 15 minutes is quite frequent. But when they're hitting the database while those aggregate views are being built, it was slowing down the process of building those aggregate views. So what we did, we were able to leverage at one of the Dodeca functions to check the database note, and our Maxwell scripting that happens for the ASO loads at the very beginning, right before we drop the ag views, we put a note in there that says that the cube is loading. Dodeca is then able to go out, read that note, and we can now tell the user that the report is loading. So if I were to go out here and try to run this report, they get a warning that the database is being updated. This way, we don't have our users out there hitting our cube while it's doing that ag view build, and that allows for a faster loading time. Most of our cubes load in under a minute or so. We do have some store reporting cubes that take about 10 minutes to load. Those are only loaded once an hour, so this hasn't been too much of a burden. I don't think I've seen really any complaints about this. Just tells them to try again in a few minutes. They come back, the cube's loaded, and they can continue on. Now, for the financials themselves, once they're in there, we wanted this to be a little bit more than just a financial. Yes, this is the official financial, and they can print this out and take it to Excel, save it. But kind of wanted it to also be a tool that they could use to leverage during their closing to kind of understand where they're at. One of our philosophies with this tenant has been that we want this to be a workstation, not just a reporting tool. We kind of also want it to be a one-stop shop as much as we possibly can make it. We're not 100% there. There's still a lot of other tools, but we're working towards a lot of that and adding more every period. So in this report, we've added some additional functionality, mostly in the aspect of drill through right now. But there's some other features that I think were pretty cool. In particular, this add account detail has been a big hit for all of our users. So when you're in the report, you can just click on that, and it's going to expand the report down, give you a list of all the accounts that make up that line and their activity. One request that I've had that I haven't been able to implement is how do you get rid of them? The only way I have to get rid of them right now is to rebuild the report, but we're looking into a way to eliminate those lines. This has been huge in that users are used to going to this. In the old world, they would go to their financial statement, look at a line, then they would jump over to their accounting system to find out the account number that's on that line, look at the balance. And then after they had the account number, they would jump over to a third system and look up the journal entry. But now they can get the account balance. And then we have these other drill throughs here that will allow them to go to their journal information. Jump over here. I have the one pre-built. Again, this is our dev environment, so it doesn't always work the way I want it to. All right, so use your imagination that we had some journal entries here. I'll show you an actual report that has some journal entries, but this is kind of what would happen is they would click on that and they would get this report, and it would have all of the list of journal entries. Now, the nice thing about this report is what we're tried to do with our users is make sure that they don't have to be an expert of the chart of accounts to use these reports. So they don't need to know the level of detail that they're going into. Like, if we look here back on the Dodeca report, this particular division is actually made up of a multiple list of divisions. So we have our operating division, our finance divisions, et cetera. But most users don't know the difference between a finance division, an insurance division, or their operating division. All they know is they want to see what Columbus is doing. But to translate that into a journal, we have to know the specific details of that particular entry. So we're getting around that by doing a little bit of workbook scripting to convert it into a format that is usable in our SQL to query against those different segments. So over here, we have a portion of the report that is dedicated to building out a list of all of the potential components of the query itself. So if they choose any level, it will give them the necessary components and convert that into a formula in Excel that we then convert into a token in Dodeca that can be passed into a SQL query. So the user, if they wanted to, they could select every single, top level department, still query and get every possible journal entry for any department without having to know that which departments they want to specify on. So that's been very nice in that they can move around a little bit more clearly through the system without having to be a master of our chart, because our chart is a little bit daunting if you start looking at all the different components. We also have some other reports in here. I don't know if these get as much attention, but there's different drill throughs to other Dodeca reports that give them kind of a breakdown of the individual, cost center components or the department components that make up this financial. We also have some similar to our journals that we're drilling through to our subledgers, mainly AR and AP, where they're looking at a higher level of detail than they would our journal details. And in that regard, this report here, even though it doesn't look like much, especially with all the zeros on it, this report pretty much was a key decision making on whether or not to go live with our implementation. Our controllers really felt a need that they had to have something that combined all of our actuals and our projection data into a single report that they would be able to use during our closing process to make sure that they don't have any variances that need to be reviewed before we closed our books. But as part of this, they wanted all those tools. So all those tools that we just saw where, right click, some of those are in here too. So now they can come in here and they can drill through, get the full year breakdown. And it's going to show them a trending report for each of the accounts that make up that financial line. So they can kind of hone in, see if an account is on trend for where it should be for the year. In addition, identify anything that's wildly off from any other budgets or projections that they're doing. And this report was absolutely critical, even though it doesn't look like much. This was a make or break, it was 2 weeks of my life that were very, very contentious, but we ended up getting it for them. And the problem was that, at the time we were trying to push them to using FRS, and this wasn't capable in FRS. And without that capability, it was a showstopper, but we were able to get this done in Dodeca, and it became a non-issue at that point. 2 weeks of hollering, and then all of a sudden it was quiet. Now, to go along with that, one of the things some of our controllers were adamant about, and something that's come up quite a bit here in this conference, is they needed a way to export out all of their financials into a PDF format. So we were able to solve that. The way we've solved it is some ways similar, in some ways different than what we've seen so far. But what we did was it's a Dodeca report that's built to run other Dodeca reports, and then it saves it out locally on their drive. They did make this one a little easier for me because they just gave me a list of reports and how they want to run. But the fact that this isn't a binary means that you gain all of those potentials that Dodeca has when using a binary. I mean, imagine running build ranges and things like that on this. you could begin doing those types of binary modifications to build a customizable report. So we're very excited about what we've come up with and hope to expand this out here. But it's very simple. The user just clicks on this. And real quick. Here's my documents, my attendance calendar there. Just make a few selections specific to my division. So we'll just run Columbus. And I've taken this down a little bit. So we give them a little notice. One of my concerns was, you might have people clicking around trying to figure out what each thing does. And I just wanted to have this pop up here to let them know what they're about to do. So if they hit OK, and you'll begin seeing the other reports are going to flash up here for a second. And now we're done. And it's going to let me know that I can check my documents folder. And there we go. There's a file now saved out there for me that contains left this binary on here as kind of a table of contents. And now we have our report. And it actually ended up being pretty simple. I think I'm using somewhere less than 10 workbook scripts to actually do the export. There's a lot of other workbook scripts around some of the messaging and some of the checks, but the actual functionality was pretty simple once I figured it out. And then along some of those lines, I'm really getting into the toolbars here, and some of the things I've seen so far, I think I'm going to borrow some of those ideas. I really like the idea of making it look like a ribbon. One of the challenges I've been running into is getting people to look above at the toolbar and find the buttons there. So the idea of making it look like a ribbon, I think, would be very helpful since everybody's so familiar with using Excel. May actually be something, suggestion here. Maybe if there were another property here for a ribbon that we could add to the UI, I think that might be something I would look forward to. All right, so this is our trial balance. This one, it's pretty straightforward, but we've added a couple different functionalities here. The ability to search multiple time periods in a SQL table, as well as we've tokenized the table itself. So we have two tables for our trial balance, one that gets updated daily for our history, and then another that has the 15-minute refreshes during our closing period. So they're able to actually refresh our trial from our SQL during our closing periods and, get the latest and greatest information. And the nice thing about this is that it is in a format that easily lends itself to a journal entry. So if you're needing to make a journal entry and you just want to pull some detail, you can actually go in here and get that information, copy and paste it into your entry, upload, and you're ready to go. So some simple selections here, whether or not you want DLT is distinct language translator, I think. So that's our store number essentially. So each time you make these selections, it adds or removes fields. So if you want the store level, it'll add that in there. If you want summary level, which is without division or DLT, it should remove that. So that's been a nice utility type of report that we put out there for people to use. One of our biggest things, though, has been the journal research that we put out there. This has been, used to be everybody lived in business objects. In the new world, that's still possible, but we're getting more people who want to do things inside Dodeca. So we built these reports to kind of give them those options. One of the things we have done as a standard, though, is we've made it so that anytime you see a blue cell, it's understood that that is where you can key in information. So, just like the last report, we got some blue cells on here. So the user just comes in here. And again, we have different levels of detail they can select, whether they want store, division, or total, just summary at the company level. But they just go in and start keying. But one of the features I added, don't really know if it's getting a lot of use, but it felt like it could be useful, is you see I have these drop-down boxes on here. When they first open, we've left them blank. But the hope is that, say you have, the division, the account, but you're not really sure what cost centers are available to use on that. So we've added these buttons up here. Just click on that, and it's going to query and say, for division 11, for this account, now I see that this is the only cost center that is available for that particular account. And again, up here, we have some buttons that add this additional functionality. And once you query, there's a list of all of your journal entries. So you'd be able to take this out to Excel. We have a lot of people who like to take this information, put it into pivot tables. And this has been very useful for getting, speeding up the time that it takes to do our close.
Hey, Noah, this is Tim. Just a quick question for you. Why did you choose to have the values on the worksheet instead of in a selector?
I think it was because the way the outline is built requires that you have an intimate knowledge of the chart of accounts itself. So if you were to want to find this account, you'd have to dive pretty deep into the trial to understand where it's at. But we didn't want our people to be experts in the trial. Most of our closing users, they only handle a specific set of accounts. I remember back when I was in the tax department, I couldn't have told you where on our trial or where on our financials my accounts were, but I knew I had these 10 accounts that I had to reconcile every period. So we wanted to kind of give them a shortcut to go into doing the journal research without having to know how to dive into the trial itself and how to manage the outlines.
All right, we've put some new search capabilities in for Essbase, and we can put some new things in for SQL for searching. We could work together with you for that. And also we have a new selector type in version 8 that lets you just put in free-form text. So that might be useful for you in the future as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of the features in 8 that we're really excited about. I know we've started the conversations around getting upgraded to 8.0, but right now it's mainly a capacity issue, making sure that we have enough time to do all the necessary research. But I know it's on our short-term list to get that started.
No, we've got one other question here online.
Yeah.
Do you load the journal entries in SQL, I think, to get the consolidated values in SQL, then load to the ASO cube for reporting?
So our journals are located in the cloud as well, actually in an Azure environment. We're using Microsoft SQL Server in Azure. We don't actually load the journal entries themselves into any ASO databases. They are strictly in relational. What we're doing with the ASO cubes is strictly at the account balance level.
Thanks.
So
You know, before we move on, I did have a original question. I walked over to get the mic. I forgot to ask or to actually make a statement about the toolbar. You said they were too small and people are more used to using ribbons now.
Mhm.
So that's something that we have on our roadmap. And I'd really be interested in feedback from the people here in the room and the people online and from you as well, Noah, as to how important is it to see ribbons? So should we make ribbons like a first class thing? Is it high priority? Is it medium? Is it low priority? So if we can get that feedback, we can figure out where we're going to put it on our priority list and get those implemented.
yeah, personally, I'd probably put it at a medium, just because I'm doing more and more with toolbars these days, and leveraging that functionality, I think, is great, and making it a little bit more user friendly, I think, would go a long way.
All right, we had feedback. We had one person say low to medium, another low to medium, 3 low to mediums, I guess. So anybody else on ribbon? Kip wants some high priority. All right. Yeah. Yeah, they've been out for about 10 years, something like that. And as far as the priority for us, where when do we put it up? I mean, we're just trying to gauge what you guys think, and I guess maybe you're saying that everything is high for you, right? So all of your issues are high, right? Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's what we're told here, is every one of our priorities
Okay.
is the number one
right.
priority. Along those same lines, here's another report where we're using some of those toolbar functionalities.
Sorry.
Yes.
Tim
Oh,
just
yeah.
handed me the mic. This is Jack Culbertson. I said that it gives you real estate back as well if you're implementing a ribbon, I think, in terms of, it depends how you design it.
Yeah, when you have multiple rows, do you really get back real estate? I guess you have multiple tabs then, and you just have bigger buttons. And I think that's probably one of your goals, is to make them more apparent. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
all right. There's professionals out there, those youngins that never saw toolbars, like us old people that designed this thing. Yeah. Yeah. One more comment coming, at least. Hold on.
No, you remember Microsoft, even they want to go with the smaller ribbon rather than the bigger ribbon, right? Bigger ribbon, reduces your real estate. Instead of that, collapsed ribbon that is still gives you what you want, and very straightforward, and takes less real estate. Maybe that would be better, because most of us, we all used to see the ribbon bigger in the office. Now the smaller one comes up. I like the smaller one. So think about that.
Okay, so then the question becomes this: do you want ribbons and the toolbar row where you have selectors and the build button, or do you want that on a separate group or tab in a ribbon? Be nice in this, and be able to see both. Be able to see a ribbon on top and a toolbar in the bottom with the selectors.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head is at, is that you'd still have your selectors where they are on the toolbar, but maybe a ribbon above.
And the build button and that type of thing. So you don't have that whole thing like you have with Smart View, where you have to go one place to do one thing and another tab to do something else, just to refresh data.
Yeah, I don't think I want multiple ribbons, just a single ribbon that we could customize at the top. And I think something that would be about the size of these two toolbars combined would probably be about perfect.
Yeah, the ribbon, what the ribbon lets you do, the ribbon lets you have multiple tabs. So, I mean, you could design it the way you want. So the technology we use for the toolbars now supports ribbons. And in fact, you see them in our template designer in version 8. So, we've started down that road. I think Amelia is anxious to go do ribbons. So the feedback we have here is valuable to having us place it into a priority.
One of your big marketing positions is that it looks and feels like Excel, but it doesn't, right? Sometimes. Yeah. Excel's pulled away a little bit. So I think to make that point with the users, and probably the people in this room could take it or leave it, but for the end users, the more it looks like Excel, the more comfortable they're going to feel.
All right. Any other feedback? Anything else online, Tim?
Well, we've got a bunch that are a bunch of stuff. Other things that they'd rather have.
Oh, okay. We'll read. I'd rather have comment attachments first. That's one of them I see. Okay. We'll show some things a bit later, but okay. No, I don't want to distract too much from your presentation, but yeah. back
No, you're
Noah.
fine. Important stuff. All right. So this is similar to some of the tools we've seen, but with just a slightly different purpose, but it still utilizes a lot of those toolbar functionalities that we're adding in here. So this one is our Flux Research, and its purpose is to just watch the accounts and you compare them against either like periods or prior period to see if we're seeing fluxes and try to explain them away. So it starts out pretty simple, just gives you the account, the balance, the prior year balance, and then the prior period balance. But we've added the ability to live in this report a little bit more. So if I saw this and I see I have a big balance, I'll probably go to a different tab because it's not going to be very helpful. But I wanted to understand where my fluctuations were coming from. In the old version of this report that we had in the old Dodeca, this is your stopping point. You go to your other systems and you start researching. But now we've added these buttons. So click of the add division button. Now we've got all the divisions and we can see all of their fluctuations. Okay, but now I know that maybe it's this Delta Logistics. Okay, I want know a little bit more. Which cost center is causing that? So using color coding, probably a little too much color. It gives you the detail you need to try to narrow down before you ever have to leave Dodeca and go to any other system. We don't have it in here yet, I don't think, but we would like the ability, oh, we do have it, cool. We would like the ability to drill through to the journal. So now from here, you know which division and which cost center is causing your problem. Now I can go research. We do need to add subledgers in there so they can start seeing, which invoices or POs are the ones that are causing that. Saw something earlier from LexisNexis about jumping to the actual invoice itself. We're not there yet, but that's our end game. Would be nice to be able to pull up those images in here as well. So this is a simple input report that one of the issues we came up against was our ARC system was designed in a way that didn't work for one of our divisions. So they came to us and asked for us to put together a way for them to do the reconciliations, primarily so that they can see the different locations. When they went to the ARCs team, the way it had been set up wasn't able to do that. And to get a answer for them was going to be a whole new pod within ARCs and several months development to get that. They brought it to me, and within 2 days, we had this built and ready to go. So they just go in here. Again, the blue cells are information they can type in, but a lot of similar functionality we've seen from other companies. Copy and paste. It has some verifications in there, but also it puts in grabs your user to let them know who was the one who input this and also the timestamp. So we have some of those, and then just a simple SQL save, and it'll send it up to our relational, and then they can export this out, attach it to our ARCs program, and they are now audit ready. But we're also using Dodeca not just for the users to do their research, but also for our team to help facilitate some of the closing activities we do. So one of the key things that we've developed has been what we call our not mapped report. And what this is doing is it's going out to each of our individual financial reports and pulling a list of accounts that are on that report, marrying that data up against our trial balance and saying, have we captured every account that should be on this account, or sorry, on this report? And the way we're doing that is we're taking a report script and exporting out the list of accounts on that report. And these are actually in 2 different cubes. So we get the report script that has the full list of accounts. We're taking that, putting that into a data cache, and then using that data cache within an MDX query on the other cube in an accept statement so that it only provides us a list of accounts that meet the criteria, same cost center, same divisions, et cetera, but aren't in that list of accounts. So this has been incredibly handy. It's especially, going through our implementation as, users are getting used to it and making entries to wrong accounts, things along those lines. Our team is able to go out and run this report with the help of the business. And if we see that somebody has made an entry to the wrong account, then we can reach out and get that information to the user so that they can correct their journal entry. That already. Another one.
Noah, we had a question on, I think it was on a couple reports ago or views ago where you were clicking a button to kind of zoom in on different levels.
Oh, yes, the Flex research. So
yeah, that one. So are you actually, if you could explain how that's working, what you're hitting and things.
Yeah, so this is all Essbase. What it's doing is whenever you hit this button, it's running a it's running a set of workbook scripts to insert the additional rows. So I think we're using report scripts on this one. It's grabbing the Essbase data. Let's actually just take a look here. So when we click on the add division, there are hidden columns in here that have all of the different dimensionality for the cube itself, and they're predefined. I know Tim talked about how we have some workbook scripts to hide anything. We use ones. Any row that has, or column that has a 1 in it, it gets hidden by our workbook script. So when the user first runs it, all of these columns here are hidden from their view. And as they click each button, we have a set of workbook scripts that unhides that row. We add tokens for each of the different dimensions, and here we're using the Essbase, the Dodeca functionality to grab the member values. And then those tokens are passed into a build range from script, which then inserts the necessary rows for the dimension that we're adding. In this particular case, it's division. And then a bunch of cleanup work here, and then it re-retrieves, hides the columns, expands, make sure everything fits right, and then updates the coloring of the actual fonts themselves.
Thanks.
So this report, not much to it, but it's our go-to report every period. This tells us whether we're in balance or not. So all it's really doing is we're retrieving against one Essbase cube that we consider our master. In this case, the Finlogis cube for units is our master. And anywhere that number shows up on any of our other reports, we compare it and make sure it ties, make sure that we don't have an account that we forgot to map somewhere. So that we run this multiple times every close, and just shows us how close we are to imbalance and where we need to focus our efforts. And there's really not much to it other than a bunch of Essbase retrieves and some Excel formulas, but it's heavily used. Again, some utility items. We have been asked to put some things in here to help identify, help the user identify the accounts they need and find things. One of such is we have this accounts by line report. And so they know that they're looking for the miscellaneous expense, but they may not know which account they want to use. They can go in here, pull up the financial page that they're looking at. In this case, I'm looking at store expense, and I've got my miscellaneous expense line, and I just build that, and it gives me a list of all the potential accounts that I can use on that line. We have made these selectors dependent on it. So if I were to choose the marketing page instead, now when I go in there, it gives me a list of accounts, or a list of lines rather, for the marketing page. So I can look at the samples. And there's just one account. So the user doesn't have to, again, have to be an expert in our chart. They can just know enough to get into a certain point and let the system help them find the rest. And along those same veins is there was an ask for a cheat sheet to kind of, help them navigate the chart should they need to. So this one, it's just a SQL query against our EMCS data. And the user just chooses the different segment that they would like to start off. It starts off at the top level. And again, we have a button here at the top. Now you click next level, and it's going to take you to, just like if you were in, an outline expanding, you're going to get similar functionality here. So if I'm interested to see, okay, what kind of manufacturing departments do we have? I can click on that one, go down to the next level, and continue going down. Coffee and spice. All right, now I'm down. I no longer have letters, so I know that I'm at the bottom, but the user might not. So we let them know, okay, this is the lowest that this is going to go. So this is functionality to help them navigate and kind of do their jobs a little easier. We're trying to make this as straightforward as possible for them. And we kind of looked at this a little earlier. This is our line breakdown that is one of our drillable reports. We're getting out of time here. All right. Just a little short. I think I can pretty quickly go through some of our projections. We did not really do a lot with our projection. A lot of what we did was a lift and shift from our old system to the new one. They liked a lot of what we had in the old planning environment that we built, so we kept a lot of that the same. But we have been able to, again, consolidate some things down. And there's also a focus, we're switching. We used to be a pretty decentralized approach to our projections, meaning that each of the divisions own their own projection, and we just, assembled them at the corporate office and put them out. But now we're switching to a bit more of a corporate office centric, and each person owns their own financial line. So some of the new things we've had to build, one of which was this finance role-based input. What we've done here is we've created, it's just a generic selector list, but we've created a list of each of the potential roles. And the thought was with this report that we could build it in a way that as they add new personnel, or they split division of responsibilities out, we can just add new roles to this, and it would pretty easily be scalable. So they just select manufacturing and grocery. I don't know if that, let's do total. Again, we've trained all of our users that blue is good. You can go ahead and input into anything blue. So when this comes up, we should see a lot of blue on this one. Again, 8.0 would be great because I'm sure we could speed this up quite a bit. So these are the lines we're using. I think we're using a UDA to identify each of the roles. But the workbook scripting is there to grab just the lines that this person is responsible for, so that we can share the same input for multiple different people instead of having to develop a separate input for our manufacturing person versus our logistics person versus our HR. So we tried to consolidate this down together as much as possible and give them all the same look and feel. One of the things I was going to suggest actually on the utility tools is show outline levels at level 1 is something that we do in a whole bunch of reports. So that would be a nice utility, because they love their groupings here. They love to be able to have all of the detail in one report, but be able to expand their groupings to get the additional detail if they want it. One of the things that we've done with the new system is our hierarchy system. We have only one hierarchy that we're maintaining, but instead we're leveraging the roles to grant each of the different reporting sections to each of our different users. So we have groups that are created specifically just for Dodeca reporting. And if you get requests, or if you put in a request for manufacturing, then you're assigned not just the manufacturing group, but also the manufacturing Dodeca hierarchy. So we're able to leverage that. And it's made it tremendously easy for us to maintain this list in a single list instead of having to maintain it in multiple different lists. Some of the other things we do is we are combining some of our Essbase and database relational databases into single reports. So we have the store list and sales. Don't think that one's going to run in this environment, but we can take a look at the binary. And we are marrying up a data set alongside of an Essbase retrieve and just pulling them into a single report. This one's actually heavily used by our C-suite. This is the report that they run before they go on store visits, and they kind of print it out and take it out to the store in hand. It has, identifying information, so the address and city zip, so they can put it into their GPS and actually make it to the store. And then, information regarding the store type and some of their sales and EBITDA information. So I think I'm going to stop it there. That's a pretty good overview of all the different reports we've built now. This is ever expanding, so I'm sure we'll have more to show next time. But leave it open for any questions here at the end.
Yeah, we've got at least one or two in the room here. Hang on.
Thanks. It's a great to see the Kroger, how it is using. Thanks for that. So this is Senthil. One question. So I see period 1, 01, 02, 03 like that. So was there any specific reason? Because we are also using for a specific reason. I will explain that, follow up your answer. But is there any reason you went with the 01 to 13 like that, or?
So that is to do with the way our relational databases are set up. All of our time fields are 2 digits with a leading 0. So to make it easier to translate it into a SQL query, we just do the 01, 02.
Okay. And you have only up to 13, or it's just for 1 quarter 13 and then you have 52 until 52 or anything like that, or?
So we have 13 periods in a year. Our fiscal calendar is 13 periods, 4 periods in our first quarter, and then 3 periods in each following quarter.
Okay. Okay, it's not by fiscal week, it's just by month.
Fiscal, yeah. It doesn't quite line up with the calendar month, but yeah, it's the same concept.
Okay. The reason I asked that is in our case, user is asking for a fiscal week. So that is 1 to 52 or 53, whatever, 53 weeks per year, right? So, but then certain fiscal weeks, they may not load the data. They may not load it from ERP. So they will skip certain fiscal weeks. If we skip a particular fiscal week, then we don't know what was the prior week is. System doesn't know what the prior week is. So what we end up doing is each quarter, we giving period 1 to 10 or whatever, 14 or whatever it is, we given that. And then if they, we are telling them not to skip any of the fiscal week. And then we are calculating a prior period, basically 07 minus 06, fiscal week, current fiscal week minus prior week. So that is the reason we using, 0 naming, 0, 1, 2, 3 naming standards.
Yeah, I think we don't really have a comparable issue that I'm aware of, but I could see that being a problem. One thing I could think to do is maybe you could do a select distinct beforehand and order it in a way that it's in chronological order, and maybe do like a VLOOKUP, then look for the offset of that, like one cell above, and use that pass into your queries.
Nice. How many users your application has?
So Katie, if you're out there still, might phone a friend on this one. Do you know where we are now? I know it's greater than 30,000. So we actually have deployed this at all of our stores. So each of our stores probably has a handful of users, and we have over 3,000 stores. So I know last I checked, it was greater than 30,000 users. Our corporate users is significantly less, but it's still probably over 1,000.
Got a couple questions here online. So on the master tie-out report, you said it compares accounts across reports to a master number. Do those individual reports link to different cubes or the same cube?
So it's all individual cubes. So we have a number of cubes here. Let's see if I can. So the way we've got this laid out is the first section on the report is just Excel formulas. But if we unhide here, it's actually connecting to a different set of cubes here. So we've got our FinLogis cube, our Bud FC cube, FinWarehouse D, Progilog, et cetera. And we tried to set it up in a way that was easy to maintain. So the line, itself is represented on the same line in the retrieve. So there's no ambiguity about where the formula should be reaching.
Okay, do you ever run into issues where the users will stay in the application and not pick up the tokens you're setting on that initial splash screen? I assume they're asking if they stay in longer than, like overnight, and you change it and it doesn't pick it up. Do you have any issues with that?
And we actually force our users out every night because of that reason. So we use the Dodeca's capability to log out users at a specific time. I think we set it at 2 a.m. So if they were to leave it on when they left for the day, the morning after, they would come up with a screen kind of saying shame, shame. I think actually one of them did say shame, shame. And it would immediately close Dodeca, forcing them to open a new instance the next day.
Okay, and there's a couple around, there's a question about your development team. So how many people you have working, the different kind of roles, and then another one, it's kind of related, but you're maintaining a lot, you get a lot of users on the system. How do you maintain security for all of them?
So Katie Rodriguez here, who's answering, is our security guru, but we have what we call our APT system, which is an LDAP-based system that we put requests in, and the user has to be approved by a specified approver. And from there, every day we get a refresh of the list of approved users. And that approved user, they've developed some role mappings in our SQL environment. And those role mappings then are passed into Maxwell, which then assigns the user the appropriate groups. So if they lose that APT, then the next day when we get the refresh, they will be stripped of their access.
And then a little bit about the roles on your team. How many people do you actually have developing Dodeca, and maybe talk a little bit about juniors versus senior and things like that.
So as part of the implementation, we actually went through a restructure, but when we started the process, our development team was about 13 people on reporting. We had, I think, somewhere around the 6 junior developers, about 4 what we call senior developers, and then just the 1 senior manager at that point in time. Probably getting that wrong, but it's somewhere around there. Since we've gone through the restructure, we're no longer just the reporting team. We're now the financial systems team. And the financial system team, we kind of broke out some of the functionality that my old team used to have, which was some of the support functionality, user facing, those types of things. So now my team comprises 7 people, 7 or 8 people that I don't know the answer because I'm still actively hiring a bunch of people and I lose track of where I'm at. But we have about 7 or 8 people that are strictly on report development as well as Essbase database maintenance. So I have 4 people on Essbase database maintenance. And then I have soon to be 2 people that are Dodeca specific. And then I've got some actual open headcount right now on some of the financial reporting management. The other pillar I should say is we added not just the support functionality, but we also added a number of headcounts related to our ledger system. Those people are maintaining our EDMCS data as well as our allocations and some of the items that are more of the cloud focused, whereas my team is specifically reporting.
All right, now this is Tim. Just a couple of things. Earlier you said this was, Dodeca was very critical to your go live. That was go live for Oracle Cloud Financials, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
So in the Cloud Financial reports, you just couldn't get them out fast enough, is that my understanding?
2 primary issues. One was the number of licenses. The number of licenses we purchased was nowhere near the amount of access that we would need to our financial reporting. So us having the enterprise license with Dodeca has made it easier for us to get people into Dodeca than to use the Oracle Cloud. Secondly is the performance of the cloud. What we found was if everybody was in there using the FRS reports, hitting the ledger database, then it severely impacted the performance of people trying to make journal entries. So there was some competing performance functionality. We had people trying to actively review their data while people were still making changes to the data. So it just made more sense to get the people who were just in there reporting out of the ledger while they were posting and processing entries.
All right. The other thing I did is I went back and looked at our GitHub issues tracker for ribbons, and we have that marked right now as an 8.x possibility. So we hadn't assigned a specific 8-point version release for that, but we'll take the feedback we got in the room and online in consideration. I took and did a screen copy of all the chat windows with items related to that and put that in the ticket. So we'll have that and capture that feedback. So, and one other thing, Noah, just I wanted to mention earlier, you mentioned right up front, you mentioned about having to lock users out while you're doing updates in Essbase and that type of thing. In 21 version 21, you have some new features that may help you. They have something called shadow cubes, let you essentially swap cubes in and out. That may be a big benefit to you when you're able to go to that.
Yeah, we do a kind of a half-baked solution with that with our store level cubes. We actually load them into a separate cube and then we lock people out while we do a level 0 export to load it in. But that definitely sounds like a feature that we could leverage.
And it's something that Oracle supports. I mean, that's kind of the deal with that piece of it. And then there was a comment from Katie as well about WebSphere, support for WebSphere. So that's something that we are working on. We believe we've isolated to a library that we use now that was too advanced of a version for WebSphere. So we backed that off a little bit and hopefully we'll have that resolved shortly. All right. All right. And Katie asked for a date for WebSphere. I'll get with you on that, Katie. So, all right. And she's asking 21 and 22. We're hoping 21. We're hoping shortly here in 21. So for WebSphere.
Thanks so much, Noah. We really appreciate it.
Certainly.